Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. John Schmelk here. I am back from vacation, ready to rock and roll and talk Giants football with you over the next 7 months as we head into the 2024 season. That's where we are, folks. The offseason is coming quickly to an end, joined by Matthew Sytak. It's all brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We'll react to episode 3 of Hard Knocks on this show a little bit, but if you really want that reaction, go to the Giants Huddle podcast. Matt and I recorded almost a 40-minute reaction to that show yesterday. So it's up there on the Giants. Yes, it's up there on the Giants Huddle podcast right now. But we're going to lead off the show with friend of the program, Dave Spadaro. He's the Eagles insider over down there at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And then we'll take your calls after we're done with Dave as we continue our team preview series. We're finally into the NFC East, and we're going to talk some Eagles with Dave. Dave, John Schmelk, Matthew Sytak here. Up the turnpike on 95. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
Doing really well. It's weird that you say that now we have 7 months to go. It's like, boom, right in your face, the first step of the ladder here, the first rung of the ladder. And, I mean, the Eagles are really excited about what's ahead for this football team, trying to learn lessons and rebound from last year's collapse.
Okay, Dave, you know what? You set me up perfectly, because before I looked ahead, I wanted to look back a little bit. And I'm going to make this as broad of a question as possible. What the hell happened to you guys in December and January last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jalen Hurts scores a touchdown against the Buffalo Bills, overtime win, Thanksgiving weekend. The Eagles go to 10-1, and I feel like everybody at that point thought, okay, this team, even though they were 10-1, they hadn't been playing great football. It was really sloppy. Had been escaping early in the season with some wins, and then down the stretch, got punched in the mouth by the 49ers and just never rebounded from that. And I think if you look at the actions the Eagles took after the season, kind of explains how they felt about it. They replaced both coordinators, offensive and defensive coordinators. They added some pieces, got a lot more athletic on the back end. I feel they didn't have a lot of ability to cover down the field. It was just, it was shocking, John. And I think in the NFL you kind of shift gears really quickly.
Yep.
But if I were to kind of like over an overarching view, the Eagles expected leadership to step up and right the ship. It didn't happen. They didn't practice effectively down the stretch. They didn't improve. The conditioning didn't look like it was there. They weren't physical at all on defense, as we saw in those 2 games against the Giants. And at the end of the day, you can't coast in the NFL. And I feel like the Eagles thought that they could kind of get there because they had been there. And it just doesn't work that way in the NFL. So they made significant changes, and here we are looking ahead to 2024. But it was certainly a bitter, embarrassing, really humbling last 7 weeks of the 2023 season.
I'm glad you brought up some of the changes that the Eagles made. Of course, they brought in Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator, Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. Can you just talk a little bit about how both sides of the ball should look different from last season with these two now leading the way?
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with some personnel additions, too. I mean, Kellen Moore has had success in Dallas, had success with the Chargers last year until there were a ton of injuries out there. He comes into Philly, and he's got outstanding wide receivers, a good tight end, a great offensive line, an outstanding quarterback, a running back group bolstered by the addition of Saquon Barkley. I mean, all of the pieces are here. And so I think what he wants to do is have more motion, a little bit more depth in the wide receiver group in terms of the route tree, get Jalen Hurts back into run mode. I think defenses, as I looked at the way teams played the Eagles last year, their first priority was to take Jalen Hurts out of the run game and make him win from the pocket. And, that just wasn't as explosive and effective as the Eagles had been. Hurts in 2022, 8 giveaways. Last year, 20 giveaways. Wow. In 2022, 4.6 yards per carry. Last year, 3.9 yards per carry. So the numbers really went down significantly in 2 key areas. They weren't as explosive offensively. So I think Kellen comes in and a fresh set of ideas, new concepts, a lot to work with here. I mean, I think there's every reason to expect this Eagles offense to be outstanding. Defensively, they have had major change at all 3 levels. Vic Fangio is coaching a bunch of guys right now. And until this becomes a defense, it's going to be a bunch of guys. Talented players. They added Devin White and Zach Bond and, Oren Burks at linebacker. They bring in, of course, Bryce Huff at the edge position, replacing Hassan Reddick. Fletcher Cox retires, so they turn to the young guys, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and some others. The back end, they've used their first 2 draft picks on cornerbacks. They signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson at the safety position, so they need to run. They'll be more athletic in the back end. They just couldn't run with James Bradbury, with Darius Slay, a pass rusher didn't get there last year. So it was just too many pitches and catches last year. And Fangio is an old-school coach. His system is proven to work. He is still in the learning out phase about what his players can handle from a scheme standpoint. So this is very much a work in progress, and not sure about the defense until we see it in Brazil against the Packers to open the 2024 regular season.
Well, one area on offense where there is going to be some change here, Dave, and this happening to the Cowboys' offensive line too. The Eagles' offensive line is starting to shift a little bit, right? You lose Kelsey to retirement. Seumalo left the year before. You have some new names on there. Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens is changing positions. Lane Johnson's getting older. How do you see this offensive line and kind of how they're transitioning from that older group to maybe some younger players coming in to building a new foundation for the offensive line moving forward?
Yeah, John, it's a great question, and maybe I'm guilty of taking it for granted in Philly because I know how many resources they pour into the offensive line, and I know what the offensive line means to Coach Jeff Stoutland, who's one of the best in the business. I think Kelsey certainly is a future Pro Football Hall of Famer and will be missed. And he's obviously gone on to great things. He's transcended the NFL from just a celebrity standpoint. But I think they are in great hands, really, with Cam Jurgens. There's a succession that comes into play here, and they drafted Jurgens 3 years ago with the idea that he would replace Jason. And Cam is younger, stronger, faster. He's got some experience. I mean, I think Cam Jurgens is an outstanding player. And in his rookie year in preseason, he was great on the football field in preseason. So here's something for him to bulk up and become a good starting right guard really says a lot about him. Now he moves back to his natural position, and I just think he'll be terrific. Now, right guard's still undetermined. Tyler Steen saw some time last year. The jury is certainly still out on him. He'll have a chance to win that job. They've got Matt Hennessy, who's got some starting experience with Atlanta, who will compete. Mekhi Becton, the former first-round pick of the New York Jets, saw some time in the spring at guard, at tackle. So they have another line of younger offensive linemen coming in, 2 draft picks that they selected in April, May. So I just don't ever worry. But your concerns are valid. But certainly when we have seen Lane Johnson go off the field, this offense has taken a significant hit. They have to find a solution, whether that's Becton, whether that's someone else. Johnson says he feels great, but there's no denying the guy's been in the league a long time and has had some injuries. So there are some new faces. I will say that the Eagles really believe that they are solid and fortified, and they've got some depth, and they've got some young players that they'll continue to develop. And, again, I just think the Eagles never shortchange themselves up front.
So going back to last year for a second again, the Eagles had one of the worst pass defenses in the league, at least in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns. And that obviously led to the selections of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the draft, as you mentioned. How quickly can those 2 rookies, along with the return of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, how quickly do you think that these guys can help improve what seems like clearly the Eagles' biggest weakness last year?
Hard to predict, hard to predict. Mitchell coming from Toledo, that's a big leap. Seriously athletic, both he and DeJean are very good athletes. So from an athletic standpoint, they take a big leap. But the Eagles also, one thing about this team, they started the transition last year when they drafted Kaylee Ringo from Georgia. They added some players after the draft, including Eli Ricks, who saw some time. And by the end of the season in 23, Ringo was playing a good bit of football and playing well. So I think that there is the expectation that Ringo will also take that next step. He's a young guy, big physical cornerback, that maybe he's next in line. But certainly the Eagles want to see competition, and they want to see Mitchell and DeJean contribute. They've got questions at the nickel position. They've got Avonte Maddox coming back. They brought in some fortification there. So, I mean, there are so many cornerbacks/defensive backs in this camp, along with offensive line. The Eagles have really identified areas where they need depth and they need the next wave to emerge. And certainly cornerback is in that group. They need the next generation of starters to step up, and this summer will be really pivotal as we watch that and see who kind of makes that next move and contributes in this regular season. I mean, certainly you don't use your first 2 picks in the draft and expect them to sit around. They'll get a lot of time in the summer.
I wonder, Dave, how the Eagles are going to utilize Saquon Barkley, other than give him the ball a lot. You know, traditionally, you guys have used a running back by committee approach where you use a lot of different guys. You move guys in and out of the lineup. You split carries up. Kellen Moore, when he was with Dallas, it was a whole lot of Ezekiel Elliott, then a whole lot of Tony Pollard. How do you think they're going to use Barkley? Is he going to be a 70 to 80% snap count guy? Is it going to be more 50% with guys like Gainwell and Shipley, who I really like, by the way, getting some playing time? How do you think they're going to utilize Saquon, given that it's really the first time in a long time the Eagles used a significant resource on the running back position?
Yeah, I think, John, that the Eagles view Saquon right up there among the very, very, very best running backs in the NFL, and that includes Christian McCaffrey, et cetera. So I don't think the plan is to judiciously use Saquon Barkley. You want to be smart about it. It's a long season. You hope that there's a playoffs scenario that he's in and fresh and ready to go. Interesting stat that kind of emerged in the offseason that I was made aware of. The Eagles last year ranked first in the league in running back yards per carry before contact. And the Eagles running backs ranked 31st in the league in yards per carry after contact. And so what that means is that clearly the offensive line opens up holes, and somebody like DeAndre Swift, a smaller, kind of elusive back, really wasn't as adept at breaking tackles. I think what Saquon, if the plan holds, he'll have room to run, and I think, you guys know him very, very well. When you're able to give Saquon Barkley and get him into the second level, he's really devastating. And I think people, obviously no knock on the Giants, but the reality is a lot of times when he carried the football, he was hit in the backfield.
Oh, yeah, Dave, this is going to be a complete culture shock. Saquon's going to be like, wait, hold on. There aren't 2 defenders in the backfield on every play trying to tackle me? What is this magic of offensive line blocking? I've never seen this before.
Yeah, I didn't know how far to go here, but yeah, I mean that's like, this is going to be this should be a new, exciting, and really, really productive world for Saquon Barkley. And by the way, I think one area that he can really help this team, and the Eagles haven't been able to get a lot of production in the passing game from the running backs. Jalen has not utilized running backs. DeAndre Swift, outstanding receiver, didn't get a lot of opportunities in the passing game. I really think they want Saquon Barkley out in space, catching the football. He's so dynamic with the football in space as a receiver. So, I mean, I can't predict percentages of snaps and touches and that, but I think he's going to be very significantly used, and they do like Gainwell a lot. They do like Shipley. They know it's a 17-game regular season. They're hopeful for a playoffs, and they want Barkley to be fresh and ready. But, my gosh, the guy's so talented. They want to use him in a lot of ways.
Just going back to the secondary real quick for one more second. Another player that John and I are quite familiar with is James Bradberry. There's been a lot of buzz that James Bradberry might line up at safety or get some safety reps throughout the spring and throughout training camp coming up. Do you think that would be Bradberry's, easiest path towards playing time and maybe even sticking on the Eagles roster this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, they want him to take some reps back there. They wanted him to take some reps in the spring, and then he got hurt and wasn't able to do so. I think James is a very prideful man. I also think he's a very team-first guy, and he is very aware of the situation. I expect him to be in great shape when he reports to the NovaCare complex next week, and he'll compete wherever they put him. They're more secure, it seems, at cornerback than at safety. they've got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship, who probably ideally would be a great third safety on a great, defensive backfield in that kind of situation. So, but there's other players that can be. So it's going to be interesting. Like, they've always cross-trained, certainly nickel and safety, and James has done some work at safety in the past a little bit here and there, I think, in practice. But I'm interested to see that. James is one of my favorite guys. I think he is somebody who's going to come in here and compete, but we all see the limitations. That they gave up too many big plays in the passing game last year. Some of that certainly was a defensive line, a pass rush that didn't get home as much as they did the year before when they led the NFL with 70 sacks. But a lot of that was on the back end and not being able to run and compete and really play the kind of defense that the coordinators wanted. So James Bradbury is certainly a player to watch for a lot of reasons in training camp. And the Eagles, again, have brought in a lot of young talents to make sure that these are not going to be easy decisions when they cut down to 53 players.
Yeah, I was a big Sidney Brown fan coming out of the draft last year too, Dave. I think he's going to be a really good safety down the road.
Coming off the ACL, how quickly can he get back on the football field?
Absolutely. I want to stick on the defense. This is my only question on the defense because, Dave, knowing the Eagles, you always think, boy, their defensive front, they're going to be a bear. But you actually look at the depth chart now. There's so many new names, so many young players in this list, right? Josh Sweat's back. Brandon Graham's probably going to be, 20 snap a game guy. They get Bryce Huff, but then Milton Williams, young player. Jordan Davis, young player. Jalen Carter, young player. How do you see this front coming together, and will these younger guys and new arrivals start emerging? And is that Eagles front going to be as intimidating as it really has been over the past 5 or 6 years with those, hockey lines of players just coming in with pass rusher after pass rusher after pass rusher?
And there is your big key to the Eagles defense in 2024. Can Jalen Carter, who has the ability, be a top-end dominating, disruptive defensive tackle? Milton Williams is a really good young defensive tackle. The Eagles love him in that rotation. Jordan Davis has been an okay player for 2 years. Is he ready to take that next step into being a very good to great player, former first-round pick? I mean, it is essential for the Eagles defense that those players all step up. Off the edges, is Huff ready to be a full-time guy? How much does Brandon Graham have? Is Josh Sweat ready to get back into double digits after a step down last season? Who are other young defensive edge pressure players? Nolan Smith, a first-round pick last year,
good one.
Really didn't see much time on the field. He's got to step up. So, every team goes through this. You have to trust your draft. You've got to get players ready for the next step, and at some point you have to turn it over to them. They've got to have that. They've got to make that happen. So, this is very essential for the Eagles defense. Those young players need to emerge. We can talk all we want about the back end and the athleticism, but if you're not getting to the quarterback, you are not making plays defensively. And that this is a new generation of Eagles defense. They have transitioned, and now they turn to some of these young players, and we'll see how they progress. And game one against Green Bay, and Jordan Love in that dynamic passing game is a pretty darn good test to find out where they are.
Yeah, it is.
I just want to take a step off the field for a second. We discussed Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox both retiring. Obviously, those are two guys that were there in that locker room for quite a long time. Some of the longest, or possibly the longest tenure players on the team. Now that they are no longer in that locker room, who did you see during the spring sort of step up into that leadership role?
Good question.
And if no one, really did during the spring, who do you expect to take that role during training camp?
It's really interesting because, like I said, last year, those were the leaders, and this team did not reverse course when things went south. And I always believe that leadership really manifests itself in tough times. And so it is time for, in a sense, a new generation. But there are still players like Brandon Graham, like Lane Johnson, like Landon Dickerson. Jordan Mailata, the left tackle, has really shown a lot of personality and outward leadership. Defensively, you've got a whole new group of players. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, a whole new casted linebacker. C.J. Gardner-Johnson comes in and returns to the team. Darius Slay still there. So I think there's a really healthy mix of older players, younger players. And the key for this team is obviously, making it work from a personal standpoint. But they've got to both learn from last year and also dismiss what happened last year. And if you understand the nuance there, what the heck happened to this football team? What are they going to do differently here with the head coach in a new situation? No question about it for Nick Sirianni. Will he treat training camp a little bit differently? Will he treat the in-season practices differently? The Eagles really didn't practice all that hard during the course of the season. A lot of walkthroughs, a lot of light practices. The idea was to keep everybody fresh and healthy, and it worked very well in 2022 when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. Did not work last year. So how do you learn from that? But certainly not a question, and chemistry is super important. And last year, the chemistry failed the Eagles, and they fell out of the playoffs very quickly in embarrassing form in Tampa. So all of these questions are valid, and the NFC East, as we talk about every year, John, no repeat winners since 2003, 2004. And boy, the Eagles look poised to win a back-to-back division championship, and of course the curse of the NFC East struck them. So, maybe we'll just blame it all on the curse of the NFC East, but I think it maybe ran a little bit deeper, and certainly leadership. There is a void there, but again, when you prepare a player like Cam Jurgens, and you prepare Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, they step up or the team falters, and it really is that simple.
And Dave, final question for me, a similar big picture question. You talked about leadership. You mentioned Nick Sirianni. They lost their two coordinators off the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They go, and it looks like they're both going to be pretty darn good head coaches based on how they did in their first seasons. Two new coordinators last year. Both have been let go. Two new coordinators, as you mentioned, this year. For a head coach to have that much turnover, it's a lot of instability. Nick Sirianni, what's kind of the mood around town about him from Eagles fans? We know how patient and reasonable Philadelphia Eagles fans are, and they're very understanding of difficult circumstances. What's the general feel for Sirianni here, just, a year off going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I don't think that it really changes that much because there's always a ton of pressure in Philadelphia on the football team and on the head coach. Nick's been in the playoffs 3 years, really disappointed about things and the way they faltered last year. But my gosh, the Eagles, you really can't ask for more than what the Eagles did in the offseason. They didn't rebuild. They didn't tear it apart. They put their foot on the gas and signed 15 free agents and went into the draft and made a bunch of trades. And, this roster is really, really good. I think everybody understands that the expectations are super, super high, and that includes Nick, and that's kind of the way it always is with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we all understand that you got to win in the NFL, and that's what it really comes down to.
Last one for me, just for Giants fans that may not know the Eagles roster quite that well, who are some players to keep an eye on this year on both sides of the ball as just potential, breakout players?
Yeah, I'll tell you the one position we really didn't talk a lot about is wide receiver, and I think there's a position that's in question there. Certainly A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, outstanding. But who's there behind them?
Good question.
Harris Campbell is somebody the Eagles need to step up. John Ross coming out of retirement. Young player Johnny Wilson, Anaya Smith, 2 draft picks. Who's your second tight end in Philadelphia behind Dallas Goedert, who's had some injury questions? The draft classes from the last couple of years here. Tyler Steen needs to step up and assume that right guard position and be a dominant player. We talked a little bit about Nolan Smith, former first-round pick out of Georgia. Kaylee Ringo, last year a 4th-round pick, started at the end of the season. Is he somebody to start opposite Darius Slay? And then a bunch of players who, as kind of those one-year veterans who fell off last year, is Devin White still a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker like he was in Tampa Bay in the last 5 years? Is Zach Bond somebody the Eagles unearthed in free agency out of New Orleans who they're going to give a bigger role to off the edge? Oren Burks, who started for the Niners in the Super Bowl at linebacker, is he somebody who can come in and really help this football team? So, again, most of the questions, I think, other than wide receiver and depth at tight end, really are on the defensive side of the ball. Offense seems pretty solid. Defense really needs to come together very, very quickly here in the summer.
Dave, thanks for the time, my friend. Always good to talk to you. And is there any truth to the rumor that Harry Roseman added 3 void years to your contract too to try to manage the cap a little bit down there? No.
Listen. He is, as long as he keeps paying me in future years. As long as my fob works in the morning, I'm a happy guy.
Void years everywhere. Thank you, Dave. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
And Dave and I always love talking. We talk during the season. I go on his stuff. He comes on us. And, the Eagles are starting to change, Matt. And we're going to do the Cowboys on Friday. You're seeing some change from them, too, up front of the offensive line. No more Tyron Smith, much like Lane Johnson. Zach Martin's getting a little bit older. So you are seeing up front the Eagles defense. We talked about all the new names. We're seeing some of those stalwarts on the 2 teams that have kind of run this division for the past 5 or 6 years starting to change a little bit as they try to usher in some younger players.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that means somewhat of a changing of the guard at the top of the NFC East as well. I mean,
there should be opportunities.
Eagles and Cowboys have sort of been running things the last,
5-6 years, right? Whatever it is.
Even more than that, honestly. Yeah. So hopefully with, all of these stalwart players from both teams starting to, leave, whether it's retirement or sign with other teams, hopefully that gives the Giants a chance to sort of get back to that top of the NFC East and, start competing every year for that NFC East crown.
Yeah, since 2016, either the Eagles or Cowboys have won the NFC East every year except for one, and that was Washington in 2020.
And that was wasn't that the year that they won the division by going
8-8?
7-9
or 8-8, something like that. Yeah, I think that was the year.
We almost won the division with a 6-10 record, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That was like, all right, we're 4-10. We have a chance.
That was the game where Eagles and Washington was the Sunday night game in Week 17, and right. Doug Peterson took Jalen Hurts out for Nate Sudfeld in the second half, and then the Eagles fell apart and Washington won, and Giants did not make the playoffs. Not that the 6-10 team
deserved to
really
make the
deserved
playoffs.
it.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that was the year Dak Prescott. That might have been the year he shattered his. No, that was 20. No, yeah, that was 2020, right? That was the COVID year. So that was 2020. Yeah, that was the year the Giants, when they played him, they ended up dislocating and basically destroying his ankle, which is why the Cowboys got knocked out that year. But you're right. Since 2016, it's really been those 2 teams that have battled it out for the division. So you hope there's an opportunity there. Unfortunately, the Eagles and Cowboys have both proven that they draft extremely well, which is why they're able to continue to refill their coffers with players. But you just hope that there's an opportunity here for the Giants to step in there and try to be more of a factor in terms of winning that division. They've not won the division since 2011. It's a long time. So
yeah, it's been a while. But as Dave mentioned, there seems to be a lot of, I guess, somewhat instability on defense just because there's a lot of new players on all 3 levels.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back, just looking at the depth chart, don't mean to interrupt you, Matt, real quick, but the only returning starters, would you consider Jordan Davis a starter last year? Probably not, right?
Jalen Carter probably ended up playing more than.
All right, so let's say 1 defensive lineman, whether you want to count Carter or Davis, whatever. Josh Sweat.
Yep.
Slay. Blankenship. Maddox. And one of those guys is a part-time player.
Bradbury.
Hey, right now, he might not start for them.
I don't think there's any chance he's starting.
He might not start. And then you have Nakobe Dean, who might not start, and Brandon Graham, who's not a starter. So
Nolan Smith.
Another guy. There's just a lot of new starters on defense, to your point.
Yeah, and a new defensive coordinator. So maybe,
Now, a good one, but a new one.
Yes, a good one for sure. But this is their 3rd different defensive coordinator in 3 years now.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Same thing for on offense, too.
Yeah. I mean, as we always talk about, as the coaches always talk about, teams strive for consistency. Throughout the roster, throughout the game, they want things to sort of stay consistent. Obviously, you want things to stay consistent as long as things are going well, which for the Eagles on defense last year certainly did not go too well. But yeah, I mean, with these questions surrounding the Eagles defense and what you would hope to be an improved offensive unit from the Giants, hopefully those, the 2 matchups this year between the Giants and Eagles are a lot closer than they've been in years past. Now, last year, the first meeting between the 2 teams, Philadelphia only won by a touchdown. They won by 8. and then the Giants won the Week 18 matchup.
Now, of course, that was post-Philly collapse, as
Yes,
Dave
that was
Spadaro
that
said.
was like the icing on the cake of the Eagles' collapse, where they went into that last game still with a chance to win the NFC East. They needed Dallas to lose, and they needed to win, and the Giants went out and just whooped them. I mean, to a point where Jalen Hurts was pulled in the first half.
Oh yeah,
the game was so out of hand
was
already.
not competitive.
Yeah. So, look, hopefully the Giants obviously hope that the offense is improved with the new additions on the offensive line, with Malik Neighbors, just, more talent at the wide receiver position. So, hopefully this is the Giants' chance to sort of close some of that ground between the top of the division and where they have been the last couple of years.
All right, let's open up the phones. We have some open lines at 201-939-4513. Again, 201-939-4513. If you want to call in and talk about Hard Knocks, we'd love to get your reaction to the episode. You want our full reaction? You have a 40-minute Giants Huddle podcast. Go check it out on the Giants Huddle podcast feed, Giants.com, Giants mobile app. Just search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform. Matt and I go through everything about free agency through the first 3 episodes of the series, quite frankly, because we didn't do reactions to the first 2 because we're all on our vacations. But so make sure you go check that out, Giants Huddle podcast. And we're also continuing our player position series. I interviewed probably... How many total interviews, Pearson, did we have on those? About 40?
You're saying 40 players?
Yeah. How many total players do you think over the course of
there? Yeah.
Probably around 40 players. We split them up into position groups. We just put up edge players. So you have all the offensive positions. You have defensive tackle and edge players up there. And for the rest of the week, we're going to do linebackers, corners, and safeties. That'll be into the middle of next week for the start of training camp. Guys, I'm telling you, you learn invaluable things about these guys. The offensive line conversation, you learn a lot about Carmen Brasillo, what he's trying to do. The receivers are fun. That includes Malik Neighbors, by the way, Jalen Hyatt, Wando Robinson. Drew Lock, I thought in the quarterback interview was really interesting. He was a lot of fun. So go check that out. If you go watch on YouTube, the defensive tackle, you see Dexter Lawrence rocking the Century Red uniform, which looks really nice.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Burns on there on the edge rusher interview. So a lot of good stuff. Make sure you go check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast. We're also posting the Giants 100 podcast series as well, where we count down the top 100 players in Giants history, starting at 100. Go check that out. You can also find that on the Giants YouTube channel. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K racing kids run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt. After the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at Giants.com/5K. Matt, so we did our full reaction on our Huddle podcast to Hard Knocks. I'm going to throw this one out there because we didn't touch on this on the Huddle episode. We talked about how Tyrod Taylor was their top option as a backup quarterback, right?
Yep.
And they end up having to settle for Drew Lock because Tyrod got paid a ton of money, right? I find it interesting, and I don't reply, but I keep an eye on Twitter on how Giant fans are reacting to this. There seems to be an inability to hold 2 thoughts at the same time when it comes to Daniel Jones and how the Giants have treated this, right? There's a conspiracy theory out there that Joe Schoen never wanted to re-sign Daniel Jones last year and the ownership made him, right? That has been a theory out there, which has always been nonsense, but that's been a conspiracy theory. So it's been made pretty clear in one of the more viral clips from the series that Joe Schoen does believe with better surroundings, Daniel Jones can be a really good quarterback, and he believes in him. But at the same time, and he basically stated this, they set up the contract so that you have an out at some point, right? So he can believe in him to sign him, but then I think it was the end of episode 2, he made a really good point where he said, look, you don't pay a quarterback $40 million to, hand it off to a $12 million running back, I believe was the quote,
Yeah.
right? And he basically said, look, this year, I'm paraphrasing now, this is Daniel's year. Like, we're going to give him an opportunity with the best supporting cast we can, and we're going to put the ball in his hands, and we're going to see if he develops into the player we thought he could develop into when we gave him his contract last year. So, this is a huge year for Daniel. 2 years ago, they made the decision. Last year didn't go well. You can believe it didn't go well because of the circumstances, but that doesn't mean you're not going to give him every opportunity with a lot on his plate this year where it's not, to me, going to be this run-first offense. Like, this is going to be, no, Daniel, you got the ball. We drafted the receiver 6th overall. Your time to cook. This is you. You got hopefully a better offensive line in front of you. You're going to have a chance to go. And I think if you put all those different clues we've gotten together, and we'll see more next week when they do the draft and maybe trading up for a quarterback, we'll get more context to the conversation, and we'll talk about it on our reaction to episode 4 next week, that, I think it's pretty obvious where we sit now with the most important position and most important player in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to doubt that this is probably the most significant year of Daniel Jones's career. I mean, 2 years ago, I feel like we probably were saying the same thing.
Yeah, and that probably for him personally was more significant because he got the contract.
He got the big contract. But in terms of, I guess, his future with the Giants, this is obviously a pivotal year for him. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you mentioned, that the quote from Joe in that second episode, you don't pay a quarterback $40 million just to hand it to a $12 million running back. And the actions that the front office took throughout the offseason, I think, are just proving that this is Daniel's year. It's his time to finally show that, last year was a fluke and that his production is going to look more like 2022 than it did in 2023. I mean,
and honestly, I think the production, win-loss aside, in terms of raw number stats, I think his raw number stats this year throwing the ball are going to be better because the line is better and the receivers are better.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, Malik Neighbors, as the number 6 overall pick, easily the most talented wide receiver that Daniel Jones has played with and has thrown the ball to in his NFL career.
And frankly, you could argue this version of a healthy Wan'Dale Robinson is the second best.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Wan'Dale Robinson in the second half of the year, once he was clear that he was fully over that torn ACL, showed that explosiveness that the Giants, wide receiver room just hadn't really had in the last couple of years since Daniel Jones arrived here in the building. And then you add in Darius Slayton, who's just been beyond consistent for the last 5 years. You add in Jalen Hyatt, who, while his numbers might not jump off the page last year, was the Blitnikoff winner a year before. And yes, he, dropped to the third round, was a third-round pick, but look at his numbers and his production at Tennessee in 2022. Those numbers, he was the best wide receiver in the nation that year. And that was a class of wide receivers that consisted of, Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison,
Zay Flowers, some very, very talented wide receivers. So this is clearly the most talent he has had in his wide receiver room. And even probably more indicative than that is the fact that Saquon Barkley's gone. Saquon Barkley has been here since Daniel Jones arrived in 2019, and he has been the focal point of the offense since then. Saquon is now gone. Yes, they replaced him with Devin Singletary, who is, a very solid, consistent running back, but he is not quite the elite offensive playmaker as Saquon Barkley.
He's not someone you build an offense around.
No, he's not. So with that, and with obviously the additions they made along the offensive line, both the starters that they added in Runyon and Illuminor and the depth that they added, it is very clear that they were putting out an offensive, unit out there to give Daniel Jones the best chance to succeed. And it is clearly, it's up to him now. Obviously, a lot of his production is still going to, rely on some solid play from the offensive line. I don't think anyone's going to deny that, considering the unit last year gave up 20 more sacks than any other offensive line in the entire NFL.
Second most in NFL history, just to remind people.
Let me repeat that. There was a 20-sack difference between the Giants and then the next highest team in terms of sacks allowed. That is insane. Insane.
It's more than a 20% difference.
Yes, and I know a lot of fans have taken the clip from Joe Shane, and I believe it was the second episode that, not even Patrick Mahomes would have been able to succeed behind that offensive line. We don't need to go into that.
No, look, guys, by the way, and I'll just say real quick on that. Would Patrick Mahomes be better than Daniel was behind that offensive line? Sure. He's Patrick freaking Mahomes.
Yeah.
Would Patrick Mahomes have been able to win a Super Bowl behind that offensive line? You saw what happened in the Super Bowl when Mahomes lost both his starting tackles, right? How did Patrick Mahomes do in that Super Bowl? He got the snot beat out of him in that game because they couldn't protect him. We've seen that show before, and that Chiefs line was still better than what the Giants' offensive line was last year. Anyway,
yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but
no, you're completely right.
There's context. There's context to this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, just back to your original point. There's a there's a difference between wanting to put Daniel Jones in the best possible situation to succeed this year, and saying like he is our long-term guy for the next 5-10 years. Like, this is Daniel Jones has to show it this year. Has to show that he's worth the contract that he was signed to last year, and that he is the franchise quarterback. I would not be surprised at all if he comes out and plays well this year. I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like the pendulum of public opinion on Daniel Jones has swung way too far to the extreme of negative towards Daniel Jones. Not saying that it should be, toward the opposite end of the spectrum as well, but I feel it should be somewhere in the middle. Like, Daniel Jones deserves, some of the criticism for his play last year. Of course, if you're, in an elite quarterback, you overcome your circumstances around you and, lift the players around you up. That didn't happen last year. That didn't happen for any of the quarterbacks on the Giants last year. But he has better circumstances this year, and it's at the end of the day, it's time for him to really step up. And we saw the best version of Daniel Jones 2 years ago when his back was, seemingly up against the wall, and everyone was sort of against him, at least outside of this building. That was the best Daniel Jones we've seen in the NFL. Wouldn't be surprised if that Daniel Jones comes out again this year.
Yeah.
Considering where the court of public opinion currently is with him.
The funny thing about it, Matt, and Scott, I see I'm going to get to your call. We do have a couple open lines, folks, if you want to get into 201-939-4513. I don't think Daniel's going to make it easy on the Giants. And here's what I mean. I don't think this is going to be, let him go, whatever, he stinks, whatever. That's how fans would react to it, right? He's going to play well enough to make the Giants have to really think about what they're going to do next year. I think that's what's going to happen. And, you hope that he's so good that it's an easy decision to bring him back, right? That's what you hope. But something tells me that this is going to be a topic of conversation for a while, because to your point, I think he is going to play better this year. And I think his level of play will be better, because I think the situation around him is going to be improved. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K race and kids run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt. After the race, stay tuned. You can hang out as I lose my place on my sheet here. Post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. You look like a runner. You a runner?
I am not a runner.
Not a runner.
Of 5Ks, marathons.
Run
on the treadmill.
Okay.
But not enough for a 5K or a.
You didn't do track in high school or anything like that?
No, I was soccer.
You're a soccer kid. Oh, well, there is a lot of running in soccer, so that makes sense.
Junior and senior year of high school, I was the goalie on the soccer team.
Okay, so
not as much running there.
Not a lot of running.
But prior to that, I was playing defense and a lot of running.
Okay. Fair enough. Giants TV is the Giants' official connected TV streaming app. Giants TV brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. And don't forget, you can take your fans to the next level with the Giants season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2024 season. To learn more about all of the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. All right, let's get to the phones at 201-939-4513. Scott is in New Mexico. Scotty, what's up, buddy?
Hey, guys. I wanted to talk about today the matchups of the secondary against the teams they're going to play in the NFC East. And they're putting a lot of, I don't know if it's pressure on Deontay Banks to be the cornerback. But when I started to review his record last year, it wasn't as impressive as I thought it was going to be. And since Paul's not on the air, I can go into PFF and tell you that I was surprised when I saw where his overall grade was. They rank him at 51.4, solo tackles 56, 2 interceptions, which was tied for 19th, targets 92, 10th, which is not terrible. Receptions allowed, though, 53, which was 21st. And I'm concerned, since it's still a work in progress with the safeties. Xavier McKinney's a hard guy to replace. Do you think too much pressure is going to be put on Deonte Banks, because he has to cover A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and CeeDee Lamb for Dallas and McLaurin for Washington? And I was just curious, what do you think? Do you think it's putting too much pressure on him? Since I don't know if Cordell Flott is the guy yet to play opposite him. So I wanted to get your perspective, because, with a grade like that, I was expecting more out of Deonte Banks, and I'm assuming he will be better in the second year, but there's no guarantee of that. So how do you rate who he's going up against, and whether there's going to be too much pressure on him to be the shutdown corner that everyone expects him to be? And is that a detriment to the Giants, or is the secondary still a work in progress?
Good question, Scott. I think there are multiple parts to this, so I'll try to rapid fire them before we get to Matt. Okay. One, yes, there's a lot of pressure on Deonte Banks. Yes, 100%. They're going to count on him to cover opposing wide receivers, the other team's best wide receivers. Number two, I think there's a lot more zone this year than man-to-man, which should take some of that pressure off Deonte Banks. There's not as much man, ISO, no safety help on your side. Just go cover your man in a lot of space, and you have to do it one-on-one. So I think that takes some pressure off of him. As for his performance last year, he didn't finish plays well to me, where he was in position. Like, you take those two catches that Terry McLaurin had on him, for example, over the top. I think it was in the first Commanders game, where he covers him pretty well, but he doesn't get his head around to play the ball in the air. And I think that's some of the technique stuff that he can learn as a second-year player, Scott, that can help him take that type of jump. Because he did give up catches last year. He gave up big plays last year. Jonathan Casillas in the post game, I'm sure you listened to him, and you're like, look, I thought his tech, he would say, he seemed to play a little bit relaxed. His technique was a little lazy in this particular game. So I think those are the things that he can get better at, because I do think you like all of the physical traits and skills he showed last year. Tells me he has it inside of him to be a top-level number one corner. Now, he has to finish those plays and show it on the field in year number two. So a lot of pressure, yes. Did he show in year one he could be that guy? No doubts about it. No, I don't think he showed it. But he showed he has it inside of him to become that guy. Yes, I think he did. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, looking back at his numbers from last year, I feel like he got mixed results. There were certainly some games where he went up against the other team's number one receiver and sort of got lit up a little bit. It happened. But as overall numbers for the season, his numbers were solid. They weren't amazing. They weren't poor as well. I mean, he had a 84.7 passer rating against, which ranked 24th out of around 75 qualified cornerbacks. Is that amazing? No, but for a rookie corner, it's pretty much every single week going up against the other team's number one receiver, it's really not that bad.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all. He ranked third among all cornerbacks and now this is one of those next-gen stats that I can't say I fully grasp what it means, but he ranked third among all cornerbacks in fewest receptions over expected allowed at negative 6.7.
Yeah, you know what? It's somehow what they do with these, Scott. They kind of take what kind of route the receiver runs, who the receiver is, and they put a percentage on what's the chance of this guy making a catch, and then they compare it to what actually happens. So to Matt's point, it's a useful number to use, but there's obviously some subjectivity in how they calculate that.
Yes, for sure. But just point being, his numbers last year were not bad. They were solid.
Agreed.
He's entering year two. Brian Daboll has spoken throughout the spring about how you can just see that Deonte Banks has a lot more confidence now going into his second season. He's had the whole offseason training, offseason preparing, learning the playbook. We always forget that rookies, as the players enter their rookie year, they didn't get a full or even close to a normal offseason. They spent most of the offseason preparing for the NFL draft, which even getting your body ready for the draft is very different than getting your body ready for the season.
Yeah, you're training for the combine. You're basically training like an Olympic athlete.
Yes. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., we saw for the first time this year, decided, I'm only going to train for the football season. I don't care about the combine. I'm not doing any of those drills. And I feel like we might start seeing more of that. But that besides the point, I think the biggest thing that is going to help Deonte Banks this year is the pass rush. The Giants, between Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence, opposing quarterbacks, opposing offenses, they're not going to have all day to just sit back there and wait for the receivers to get open.
Remember, all the blitzing last year, though, did help in that respect, where quarterbacks had to get rid of the ball quickly because of all the blitzes they sent. And there will be fewer blitzes this year.
Yeah, but even with those increased blitzes, they didn't really hit home on them.
No, hit home, no, 100% right.
Or,
yes.
Correct. Or even a lot of the time come close to hitting home.
Also true.
They were among the highest in blitz rate, but like their actual success on those plays was not nearly as high. So I do think Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence, they are just going to make life sort of like a living hell for opposing quarterbacks, and them having less time, the quarterbacks having less time, is just going to benefit Deonte Banks.
Yeah, and Scott, I think also it would be fun to see him play a different technique, right? Because last year with so much pressure, man, you press, you're trailing the guy, you're not looking at the quarterback, and you're kind of guarding your man rather than looking for the ball. This year, and it's not out yet, it'll be out next week when we talk to the corners and safeties. One of the things we talk about on the Giants Huddle is how all these guys are excited because they're now going to be able to go into their coverages with their eyes on the quarterback to make plays on the football. So I'm curious to see how Banks plays in more off, less bump and run, less tight man. Remember, he got both his interceptions last year in zone coverage. He didn't get them in man coverage. So can he be better getting after the ball maybe? These are all interesting things that I think we'll have to wait and see how the new scheme impacts how he plays.
Yeah, but even to my last point, I don't know if it was the second episode or the third episode of Hard Knocks, Joe Shane straight up said, the additions we made, especially with Brian Burns, our pass rush is going to alleviate the pressure from the secondary.
Yeah, better.
The GM said it.
Right.
Yeah, but the GM said it himself. So I truly think that
you're right.
That pressure up front is going to make life easier for the guys in the backfield.
Yeah, I agree with you. One last question, and I'll take it off the air.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Again, I talked about the receivers and what they're up against, but the safeties are going to play an important role, I think, in how the Giants play this year. I'm still not convinced yet if they're using or how they're going to utilize the safeties they have. Like, I was surprised that Dane Belton didn't get a little bit more playing time than he did, because he seemed to be around the ball at the end of the year more so than some of the other safeties. And yet, I think as I'm looking at the Giants, I think his role has been diminished by some of the people they've picked up. So how do you envision how the safeties are going to impact their secondary with the players that they have and how they might be utilized?
Great.
And I'll take your questions off the air, guys.
Thank you, Scott. Look, safeties in a two-split safety zone defense are very important. They're very important players. They're the last line of defense. They're going to have to cover tight ends. They're going to have to sometimes cover slot receivers depending on how you're lined up. They're going to be hugely important in how quickly Tyler Nubin figures things out, how Dane Belton progresses, and how Pinnock can cover. I think will all be important factors. Pinnock's role is going to be a lot different in this system than it was in Wink's system, where he was at the line of scrimmage all the time and blitzing a lot.
Yeah, I'm actually encouraged, very much encouraged by the group of safeties that the Giants currently have. They don't have that sort of star safety like they did last year with Xavier McKinney, but they have four guys in which I wouldn't be surprised if any of those four ended up being named starters at the safety position, between Nubin, Jason Pinnock, Dane Belton, and Jalen Mills. All four of those guys, I think, could be very big contributors to the defensive backfield this year. We saw Jason Pinnock, the first chance last year that he really had for significant playing time on defense. He had a great season, by far the best he's ever looked on defense in his short NFL career. Tyler Nubin was widely considered either the top or one of the top safeties in this draft. I mentioned this, a month or two ago on the show, but a lot of people think that if he just ran a slightly faster 40 time, he would not have been there where the Giants took him in the second round.
There's a good chance.
There's a good chance he could have been a late, very end of the first round, maybe very beginning second round draft pick because of his production at Minnesota and his high football IQ. He's very, very smart back there. I don't think it's going to take long for him to earn a starting spot in the backfield, defensive backfield.
I agree.
And I don't think it's going to take long for him to become the best safety the Giants have on this roster. I think that will happen at some point during this rookie season. And this is coming from someone who loves Jason Pinnock and who was very high on Jason Pinnock going into last year. And as Scott mentioned, Dane Belton, limited playing time in his first 2 seasons, yet somehow he seems to just always find the ball. I mean, last year he played 26% of the defensive snaps, had 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. The year before, playing 39% of the defensive snaps, he had 2 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, although one of those did come on special teams, the kickoff.
Yeah.
But
No, you're right.
But regardless, and then Jalen Mills is just a proven veteran who's been around the league for a while and he's definitely the most veteran voice in that room now and just brings consistent play to that group. So while the 4 safeties I just mentioned, none of them might not have coming into this year that the star name, I think they are a very talented group that are going to prove a lot of people wrong this year.
Len in Columbia, Maryland will wrap us up today. Len, how are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well.
Well, here comes the season.
Fast and furious, my friend.
Put the analysis aside and get out there and show us what you got.
Can't wait.
Just a quick comment on Banks, and then I want to talk about the off season. I got him as my breakout player. I think he's just going to explode. And I mean, he's a good football player, and I think this is it. I think he's going to be our breakout player of the year.
I think he's the guy that has the best of what that was already on the roster. He is the best chance of a guy of becoming a star this year. I think you're right about that.
In our in our series we have on Giants.com, 24 questions in 24 days leading up to training camp, I was given the question, who is the defensive breakout player this year? Deonte Banks was my choice, and it was pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to show off because he'll be covering some great receivers. And, well, good for him. Local guy down this way, going to the University of Maryland. So I followed him all those years when he was at Maryland.
I love hearing the birds chirping in the background, by the way, Len. It feels like a very serene atmosphere you have going down there right now.
You're talking about me or the background music?
No. You. I hear the birds chirping in the background. It sounds like you're in the backyard. You have a nice relaxing day. It sounds lovely.
I am, and as you can imagine, in 95-degree weather, the air conditioner is humming pretty good.
I would hope so.
So maybe
yes.
that's what you're picking up. And I'm glad to hear that noise, by the way, because we lost it last night for about 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, jeez.
And it was painful. Well, first world problem, air conditioning goes down. I mean, oh, God. Listen, a great off-season coverage, Sean.
Thank you.
Not just with the site and with this show, but, the Giants themselves, the 100th anniversary program, so to speak, starting with those, 64 best plays and now working through these top 100 Giants and, the legacy night. And I'm sure there's going to be more coming through the season, but they have really nailed it on this anniversary thing.
The whole team has done a great job with it.
Oh, man, they've done just really terrific. And I'm really enjoying this 100. I don't know if Matt knows, but I go back pretty far with this group, Matt. I saw my first game in '62, so I'm a senior guy, and I love seeing some of those guys from the 50s and 60s names pop up again, and brings back a lot of memories, and of course they are well deserving.
Len, at some point when the list is fully out, I want you to call on one day, and we'll leave you on for a while. We'll do a long call on kind of where you think maybe some guys are ranked wrong, incorrectly, correctly, since you've pretty much seen them all play.
Yeah, and just to do that a little early, John. You can't argue with these first 30 guys. You want to argue somebody should be 83 instead of 87. I don't know how to get into that, But I think that committee or that panel doing a really nice job picking these guys. It's hard to doubt any of them. It's just good to see some of the older players from back in the 60s, and I'm sure we're going to see more in the next 70 picks. And I should have mentioned Hard Knocks. I think that was just, if you're going to do Hard Knocks for the first time as a team, man, this just fit in perfectly. I mean, it just fell right into place. That's some great programming. A little shocked in knowing the Giants like I do, and the conservative viewpoint about being on shows like that. I thought the candor was wow. I mean, it's just, it's right out there. I don't think they held anything back. But pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. And you're very entertaining, and I'm really looking forward to the last one on Tuesday.
Every team has to do Hard Knocks eventually.
Yeah.
And, I think the Giants figured, why don't we be you have the 100th season this year, give the fans something special, do it in the off season for the first time. So it's not, you're not bothering the coaches and players during the summer. It's a little bit different. I think it's worked really, really well.
And Len, good news. There are 2 episodes left, not one.
Oh, 2 episodes
Yep,
left.
we got
Okay.
2 left.
I thought they were going to try to get us finished by training camp, but that's okay. Good. Oh, I'm happy for that.
Yeah, my guess, Len, is that it'll be the
Terrific.
draft next week, and then the week after that will probably be a lot of the 100th season stuff, I bet.
And spring
Oh,
practice.
great.
And spring
spring
practice, yeah.
practices. Yeah, and
Yeah,
they're
one other.
then they're setting it up where the Giants Hard Knocks ends. The following Tuesday is when the Chicago Bears training camp
Oh, is
Hard
that true?
Knocks begins.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're going right into
How
it.
about that?
And then,
Yeah.
and then they're doing the in-season one too now,
The
right?
whole
So I'm
AFC
sure.
North.
So I'm sure once a good division to pick, by the way. So
Yeah.
I'm sure once the training camp one is over, they're gonna probably jump right into the AFC North one. I bet, right?
Well, the last couple of years, the in-season one didn't start until like halfway through the year.
Well, that was the one that was on Amazon, though, right? Is this
No,
one?
I was talking about like the Cardinals and the Colts, I believe, were both on it. I don't think it
Yeah, didn't
started.
that air on Prime though, or am I wrong about that?
That I'm not sure. I thought it was Hard Knocks in-season HBO.
I wasn't sure if it was on HBO though. Let me find. I'll look that up. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Yeah. Hey, one other thing on Hard Knocks. I'm sure, if you get into the, the group forums and the people talking to each other, you're
it
going
was
to find
HBO. You're right.
you're going to find some people being critical of Mr. Mara's involvement here. But hey, listen, this family's been involved with football for 100 years. It's been their business. They don't do cars. They don't do computers. It's all about football.
Len, what I don't understand is that do people not expect the guy that writes the checks to have an opinion?
Well, not only that,
I mean, it's
you know,
kinda crazy,
What do,
no?
what do they want a guy who? I mean, if you look at what the Giants are worth on the open market, if they were going to sell that team, and he's got 50% of it, then let's just round off to $4 billion to the Maras. What do they want this guy to do? Go to some South Sea island and disappear for 10 months?
And Len, it's also
come on.
it's also pretty obvious by watching that. Yeah, John Mara might go into Joe Shane, ask him what's going on,
Yeah.
and give him his opinion. And then guess what? Joe Shane's going to do whatever the heck he wants.
Yeah. And the good news is, I guess, you hire a general manager and you let the general manager do his thing. But I guess the point I was trying to make, I hope Joe's listening to John Mara. I mean, this guy knows something about football. You know what I mean? I mean, this is not. He's not he's not an automobile salesman. His whole business has been football. The family's all about football. I would listen to him closely with what he wants to do, and then you make your decision. But to think that he shouldn't be in the room at any time is ridiculous. I mean, holy cow.
When it comes to the best player on your team and the guy that's the most popular on the team, I hate to tell you, every single owner in football, all 32,
absolutely.
would be involved in those conversations.
And longest tenured player.
Yeah, and that too. And by the way, a player that everyone in the building adores as a person. Like, there is no personal animosity to Saquon Barkley. He was the representation of this organization for 6 seasons. Like, it was a big deal.
That's John, that last point you just made was a great point. This is not just...
He's the face of the franchise.
I mean, this guy has been the face of the franchise and handled it well.
Yeah, he's been great. No one has any will towards Saquon as a guy. He's been a great representative.
The best thing about him, the guy battled back from injuries, worked himself, to get back from the serious injuries that he had, and just gave it his all. Personally, I'm sorry he's gone, but I don't want to get into that. I mean, that's just, we just root for we root for these guys now.
You root for the
Hard Knocks
colors.
has been great.
Thank you, Len.
And I'll stay in touch, but just a quick one, John. I got passes for a couple of days at camp. I'm just watching the weather forecast, and I'll stay in touch.
Pop me a text. Let me know when you're coming up. Thank you, Len.
Thank
Always
you,
good to
Len.
hear from you. Len is going to have some opinions, I'm sure, when the rest of the top 100 list comes out.
I'm sure.
And no one's watched. I mean, maybe, well, not no one, but few people have watched more Giants football than Len. He might even top the Tino, to be honest with you, because he's been watching it longer than Paul. So he might actually top Paul on that. Which, if Paul was here, I'm sure he'd be like, John, there's no way. And he would grab the arm too. That's why I did it. All right, you got anything else?
No, I think that's it for today.
For Matthew Satak, I'm John Schmelk. For Pearson Butler, thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We're back tomorrow. Matt and Paul are on. They're doing the Commanders. Then Paul and I will wrap up the week. We're doing the Cowboys on Friday. You taking a little 3-day weekend this weekend? Is that what you're doing?
I'll be working Friday, just
Okay.
not in the office.
Okay. Well, good stuff.
Last Friday before training camp.
Dude, trust me. I'm gonna after that show on Friday. I'm gonna try to get out of here if I can. We'll see you on Friday, everybody. See you tomorrow, rather, on Big Blue Kickoff Live at 12:30. And then, by the way, next week we're starting shows at 1, just so people get ahead of things. Next week, 1 p.m., and that's going to accommodate training camp. We'll be on after practice every day. That will give us basically. We're not going to do like these video practice recaps, I don't think, unless we're asked for it in the next week and a half. We have not been told that yet. But I think we hope to make BBK kind of like this is what happened at practice today type of show. So make sure you stay tuned to that. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow at 12:30.